So, unidentified, mysterious animals. Umas are individuals or entities within Undead Unluck which are created by God to do his bidding. They are embodiments of the rules within the world, unlike negators who actually negate rules within the world. Umas have appeared in various forms throughout the series. We know there are phenomenon type Umas and we know that there are concept type Umas, but I just wanted to make a video where we discuss all the Umas that we've seen throughout the series and add a little bit of light in terms of what they brought to the series, their relevance in terms of progressing the plot, and just get a little bit of a discussion on what each of them brought to the table. But I know this one might be a long one, so shit, remember. So to begin, I'm just going to shed a little bit of light on the rules and information we've gathered about Umas throughout the series, and then I'm going to get into the different Umas that we've seen throughout it. So upon their creation, Umas are taught one thing and one thing only. You have to use your rules to make human beings suffer. And the two types of Umas, as I mentioned, phenomenon and concept types, both do this through using their abilities. They have the ability to expand their rule set to a wide radius around them, and within this radius, anybody who enters has to adhere to those rules. So this will be explained in greater depth later, but just want to mention that. The phenomenon type Umas are the lesser of the two. They're said to that the concept types look down upon the phenomenon types, but we'll see that no matter which type it is, they do have very immense strength. Umas are often the target of quest, and whenever an Uma is eliminated, their rule is actually expunged from the earth. However, we learned very recently that even whenever they're defeated, there is a bit of a lag time in between the defeat of the Uma and that rule being expunged from the earth. However, anytime an Uma is defeated completely, not just captured, but actually defeated, that rule is taken off earth. So this does lead to very immense repercussions very often throughout the series, and that's one of the biggest driving factors within the series in terms of, plot progression and just foreshadowing and whatnot. And the only way that you can truly defeat an Uma is to cut it open and take out its core. That core must also be destroyed. However, that is the only way that you can actually fully on capture or defeat an Uma, to take that core out and use that core. And we've seen that even if you have an Uma in its core state, you can level it back up to whatever its highest attained state has been. There are little cubes which are sort of feed for the Uma, which you're able to feed them, and after being fed that, they will level up back to the size that they were at beforehand. And there's some interesting stuff. I guess this is just an extra tidbit of information that I thought was interesting, but along with, similarities to the real world, illicit fauna and flora trading, there's illicit Uma trading within this world as well. Human beings do know about Umas, but they just treat them in a different way. They refer to them as cryptids, and they just kind of think of them as very odd creatures, but they engage in using them, they use them for their abilities, they eat them, they do every sort of depraved human thing that you may think could come about when interacting with some sort of exotic animal. Time to get into all of the Umas throughout the series. I'm going to skip a couple Umas, just because not every single Uma is fully fleshed out. However, it's going to be an honorable mention section. Feel free to drop a comment down in the comment section below if you think I missed anything, but yeah, let's get into it, baby. First, Uma Move. This is the Uma which embodies movement. This Uma, which we see has been captured by the Union, is used by Jules in order to teleport her and members of the Union to anywhere around the world. And we see that it really only obeys Jules' authority. Other individuals who try to command Uma Move have been met with, pushback from the creature, and they know that Jules is really the only person who is fully able to command this Uma. One of everybody's favorite Umas, Clothy. Clothy is an Uma which embodies garments. The ability which Clothy has in his regular state is that he can latch onto any individual and turn into the garments which that person desires the most. And although he latches onto them and kind of does something for them, it bewitches the wearer as well, allowing Clothy to take full-on control of the wearer and allowing them to, become super brolic, but it's all at Clothy's behest. But after he jumped on Andy and saw the craziest desire in the world, it was defeated. And Andy had became, the bearer of Uma Clothy. And a very cool one, because I think as we get to later in the series, it's a very cool similarity to Unruin and Uma Blood, as Uma Blood kind of very similar to Clothy, just as the garments for Unruin very often. Next, just a quick mention, Uma language. Uma language was a Uma who, through its defeat, actually unified all languages within the world, and I'm only mentioning this because it had a very big repercussion in the series. The unification of the languages left negators, who don't forget the world beforehand, in a state where if you didn't speak English, you were screwed over. They would immediately know that you are a negator, and this caused a lot of negators to get hunted, such as Shakara, and it led us to this point where, we have the 11th member of the Union. Next, Uma Spoil. Uma Spoil is a phenomenon type Uma who embodies spoiling and decay. He is a lover of depravity and death, and we get some interesting stuff within his arc. This is the first Uma that we see create juniors, which are a sort of offspring of an Uma. You have to kind of impose your rule onto a human being, and after that human being is transformed using your rule, that human being can never return to its human state. And the zombies which it created just get swipe, swooped. However, once Uma Spoil ingest a bunch of zombies, we also see something interesting as well. The first Uma to reach phase 2. And whenever an Uma reaches phase 2, it not only enlarges its body, but greatly powers it up. And Uma Spoils phase 2, we see that he has a spoil barrier around him. Anything or anybody who enters that barrier starts to disintegrate and starts to spoil away. Another thing that he has within this second phase state is a disintegration laser. Anything which this laser touches just gets bibbidi boop schmapped. However, didn't matter. Victor, the conqueror, the man who swept battlefields far and wide, had his first appearance with our boy Spoil and was able to snap, cut him up, take his core, and move out the door. We're on to the next one. Uma Galaxy. This Uma was very interesting as it added a quote-unquote cluster of celestial bodies, stars, and planets, birthing myths, and a naming system called the Days of the Week, based on celestial bodies. And it's really cool because beforehand you see Victor ask, what day of the week is it? And Shin's like, I don't know. What do you mean? What do you mean? And it just shows that Victor, obviously remembering everything from past loops and yada yada yada, knew that, dang, that shit's gone also. However, with the addition of Galaxy came a lot of things. We see that aliens got added to the world, and we see how, and overall with the story, I guess to say, the severity of penalties is a very real thing. Whenever a rule is added or retracted, it affects not only the current state of the world, but the past, the present, and the future of the world. And I guess I need to mention this because it's one of the coolest things in Undead. If you look beforehand within the series, before Galaxy is added, you notice that there's no stars, there's no anything in the sky. However, after the addition of Uma Galaxy, there is a cosmos. There are stars within the sky, and you do see that. Like, remember whenever Gina had mentioned, what the heck is your painting, Fuka? It's that. Kain, the giant orca. So we see Kain during the first skirmish between Undead and Unrepair, and Kain is a giant orca who is used by Under for the means of transportation. Kain has got a really cool design. He's got 3 eyes, 4 fins, 2 tails, and he seems like a very placid creature, very nice guy, and we don't know much about him besides just the fact that he's very loyal to Under. He can be a domicile for Under. Whenever they need to, they crawl into his mouth, and I guess it's large enough within there that they are able to stay within there. They're able to travel within there as well. We even see that he can eat pieces of land just so that the people within Under actually have a house within it. We saw that they ate a little castle home base type shit so that the people within Under had a place to stay inside of Kain. Uma Burn, a phenomenon type Uma who embodies burning. He had a sad introduction just due to, the state of the manga where it was at, because, that was whenever Billy betrayed the Union. But we see that he's at Billy's control, and he has a very keen sense of loyalty towards Billy. He fights for Billy, he appears anytime Billy wants him to, and they obviously have some sort of good relationship there. I don't know how Billy ensures that he's completely loyal to him. You see that Uma's such a spoil who have a very, selfish, self-centered personality aren't as easy to get working for you as others, but maybe it's just due to the power of Billy. Nonetheless, we know that Burn is a very strong individual. He sparred with Spoil and was beating Bro's butt, even though there was a sort of disadvantage just due to the fact that you can't spoil something that's burning. It was just an interesting thing to see that fight. On to the 4 PF Kings of the Seasons. The first one we need to mention, Autumn. So Autumn is a concept type Uma, so we're finally stepping into this larger scale type of Uma, the strongest individuals out of the Uma bunches. And Autumn, obviously the embodiment of Autumn, has an insatiable appetite for a good read. In its pursuit of a beautiful story, it feeds on human life. Similar to Spoil, any Uma to reach its second phase has to feed on something. Every Uma has a different type of feed, however, Autumn's was a good read. It would use its giant claws to slice down on human beings, and whenever it sliced down on human beings, it would turn them into stacks of books. And within these stacks of books reads the human being's life. And it was literally just searching for a good read, but it was a very strong Uma. In its second phase, it took a conjunction of people to fight him. We had to pair up with the bad guys to even do it. Paired up with Rip, Latla, and everybody's favorite girl, Bunny, to defeat Autumn. And a very interesting arc, but I'd say that this was just really a introduction to the 4 Kings of Seasons. Gonna touch on Winter second because it's definitely the worst of the 4 Kings of Seasons. It's not its fault, but I'm just stating the truth. Winter was another concept-typed Uma, which embodied Winter, obviously. It was being held hostage as bait by Billy to try to get Jules' attention. Obviously, Billy and Jules had that fight, and Billy said, cut my girl Jules' arm off, but happens to the best of us. Autumn had this very placid state. We never even saw it move. The only thing we really saw it do was expand its region of rule, just making everything snowy and cold as hell around it. However, after Fuko comes over to to the Under, they just literally crush Winter. So, shout out you, bro. Summer, summer, summertime. This is one of my favorite arcs in the series, baby. Like, come on, summer? This was a really dope arc, and this was a really cool Uma. Another concept type one, obviously embodying summer. Whenever we first arrive there, we see that this is going to be a pretty hard-boiled individual. Its juniors were quite literally damn near the size of Spoil, so we already knew that the core, the regular guy, was gonna be a big-bodied boy, and we didn't even know how big-bodied this boy's gonna be. We see him in his first phase, and it's literally just a giant centipede. However, as all of these Umas do, to reach its second phase, it fed on gunpowder. And after feeding on a crap ton of gunpowder, mostly due to the help of my boy Fang, Uma Summer reaches its second phase, and after being a centipede, this dude said, I am going to be Omega Shinron, because it turns into this gigantic dragon with these indestructible scales all along its freaking body, and all of these scales had to be destroyed at the same exact time in order to defeat Summer. It was only through a highly collaborative team effort between Andy, Fuko, Mui, Shin, Tatiana, Shikara, and Top that we were able to defeat this Uma. And following the defeat of Summer, obviously we had some big repercussions in terms of the series. We finally, sadly, saw the death of Shin, the turning of him from a human being to a Jiangxi. We saw the passing of Untruth from Shin to Mui, and we just got a lot of developments. This is even, the point whenever Fuko has to decide I have to go over to Under in order to not only help the Union, but try to save the friggin' world. But we're on to spring. The last of the 4 Kings of Seasons, and another concept type Uma. Spring embodied, the spirit of spring, and it appeared as this Oni, and was basically just Hikari from Jujutsu Kaisen right now. It was just a dude who liked to gamble, and he was lucky as could possibly be. Like, if I had a boy like Spring, I would have bought 3 million lottery tickets. Every time I get a paycheck, I would be like, Spring, help us. And within Spring's radius of effect, it creates these giant cherry blossom trees. And these cherry blossom trees, raining down cherry blossoms, the fleeting spring, causes humans to become cherry blossom trees as well. And as we said earlier, whenever a human being gets transformed by an Uma, they cannot transform back most of the time. So it's a very scary situation to try to avoid these cherry blossoms. However, with the cherry blossom transmutation, it was avoidable by wearing garments or just staying hidden. But even with that, unless you really had a negator ability which created some sort of barrier, something like freaking Unchange or something like Old Lady Yusai's ability, like it's kind of hard to try to stay out of the range of this ability. Spring was the first time throughout the series that we'd seen an Uma reach phase 3, and it was one of the first times we'd seen that Umas do have a sense of free will, and that their personality isn't just a personality, I guess to say. They're a lot more similar to human beings than we may believe, some Evangelion type shit. Uma Spring had a very vast past that Fuko actually was the one who uncovered through touching a bunch of artifacts and really risking her brain. However, we learn about the fact that the original Unbreakable, the original Ishin, was best friends with Spring. And through their relationships, not only Japan came to love Spring and stop hating, the cherry blossoms, but Spring finally realized that human beings don't hate me. That rule that God taught me, it might not be as true as I thought. I might not need to harm every single individual who I come across, and there might be people out here who mess with me for me type shit. And through their relationship, they loved each other, and they really gained this bond that taught Spring, hey, I kind of rock with the world. However, that didn't really matter, because we also learned during this arc that Umas, since they are the direct children of God, they can be interfered with by him. Whenever Spring was starting to think maybe this shit ain't worth fighting Fuko, God quite literally interfered with the fight, making him level up, making him go harder in the fight in order to try to defeat Fuko and stop the interference which Undead and Fuko were imposing upon God's world. During their fight, we see some really dope stuff from Spring. Spring is the first Uma we've seen throughout the series fighting with artifacts. We see those 2 dice that he has within his hands. With these dice, he is able to, similar to Vanessa from Black Clover, with a rogue, he's able to bend the will of time, the will of a situation. He's able to, through rolling the dice, if the outcome is in his favor, change any situation into his favor. So the example within the series was Billy shot his nuke at him, and he got his high or low roll. I don't remember which one it was, but through that roll, the nuke literally became his, because that's what he bet on. And there's a lot more games to what Spring does. That's kind of how Spring fights. He just says, hey, let's play some games. And through the fight with Fuko, he realizes that, I love this world. And shout out my guy Spring, one of the most beautiful arcs within Undead Unluck. Even if it's not everybody's favorite arc, it was just dope as shit for me. So this next one I'm mentioning may not be an Uma. However, I feel like I'd be doing a disservice not to mention her in this same list. Luna. Luna may not be an Uma, however, I believe she presumably could be Uma Moon. We knew that the moon was always here, although there was no celestial bodies. The moon has always been within this series, and I feel like presumably, since there's rules for damn near every single thing within the world, it could have been Luna who embodies Uma Moon, but I have no idea, just need to mention it. Okay, outside of Clothy, this might be my favorite Uma in the series. Uma Ghost. Uma Ghost is a concept type Uma, I believe. There's no written in stone saying that. However, just thinking of it similar to Spring, similar to the rest of the seasons, he fits in more with that, more so than he fits in with people like Spoil or Burn. However, Uma Ghost, a concept type Uma, the reward for the capture of Uma Autumn. Whenever we are introduced to Uma Ghost, we are able to now voluntarily manifest our souls, which obviously comes into account later in the series with astral projection. However, we also learn that we're now with Ghost, souls after a death are still within the world for a little while. Like, you actually have a ghost within the world, and this allows people, if long as you have a body which is able to be inhabited, for you to put that soul back into the body. Obviously, it's coming into account right now with Fuko trying to save her after the snip, snoop, snap with Unruin. However, that was actually Ghost Boy. Umo Ghost and Unruin paired up just due to Unruin offering him numerous amounts of souls to consume through, his just debaucherous behavior. And they worked in conjunction to make a plan to defeat the Union. So Ghost was the individual who went to the Union and blackmailed Nico, saying that if you abide by my plan, if you hop along board my ship, I might be able to get you Ichiko Namuri, your wifey booty, unsleep back. Through their work together, they tried to defeat Andy and tried to overthrow the Union, and it didn't work out, obviously. However, we saw some really cool things. Ghost assimilates with Nico. The first time we've seen an Uma working body in tandem with a human. And although they're working in tandem to begin with, Uma Ghost kind of just powers up all the things which Nico is using, his astral dolls and just, his astral balls. But afterwards, we see Ghost say, nah, this was all a part of my plan. I just needed a body because for me to reach phase 2, a ghost needs to physically manifest itself into a human. So whenever they fuse together, we get Uma Ghost phase 2, a really dope phase 2, short-lived. However, this was a very strong state. It was able to make its body astral or physical at any point, and the only way to defeat it, presumably, would have been to hit it with 2 things at a time, both the physical and the astral shit. So Andy, being on his hard-boiled stuff, said, hit that boy with a Getsuga Tench Blade, astral chain shit, shout out to Switch, and yeah, defeated Uma Ghost. Uma Thirst, another phenomenon type Uma. Not going to go too in depth into this one because we really don't know too much about it. However, it kind of leads into the next step. All the Umas mentioned whenever we picked up Lucy. There was a lot of Umas right here, and there's only one we really need to talk about, so let's just kind of skip through these guys. So, Thirst, Jewel, Bomb, Insect, Gravity, Slice, Magma, and Splash. On our way to Unruin's Castle, we come across all of these Umas, and although they're all pretty strong, maybe fucking 60 chapters ago they would have been a problem, the real problem appeared. The self-proclaimed King of Uma. Our boy Seal, a phenomenon type Uma, I believe, just because, sealing is not a concept. Seal is a regulator sent directly by God and Luna through, more so God. Luna was the one who informed Jules that this was going to happen. But a regulator who was sent due to Undead's actions throughout the story, him trying to rewrite the story which God was enjoying. He was sent to try to stop this, and he was said to be the individual who, throughout time, any undead, he was the one who was sent to try to defeat him. Since you can't kill undead, and that's just a thing, even the loops can't kill undead, what he would always do is seal him away. And Seal has a very interesting ability, so he can seal any animate or inanimate objects. The inanimate ones, he seals them up just to use them for, distractions or attacks. He seals up all the trees, drops them all over the area. However, he also has the ability to seal any animate one, negators or Umas, and use their abilities to his liking. So, we see during the fight, although there's all these Umas around him, Andy was fighting Umas before Seal pulled up. Seal just goes, you guys aren't doing your job. Seals all of them away and starts using those abilities, Jewel, Bomb, Splash. All of these things come into his power. And this is why he is the King of Uma, because he's anybody and everybody. And although I think still, Seal, hey, Tatiana for the smash, bro. But I still, you do have to at least acknowledge that he is realistically the strongest Uma we've seen so far. By far, I believe. And lastly, we got a couple honorable mentions. I told you I wasn't going to talk about every single Uma in depth. However, I think it's fair that we do try to mention them at least. So we got fools like Eat, Past, Revolution, Snow. Those are just a couple guys that we don't really know. Pero, yeah, dog, I just love this part of Undead Unluck. Umas are very interesting, and I think it's one of the coolest ways that a mangaka, in period, overall history type shit. In my eyes, a mangaka's used his actual, characters within the series to progress the plot. Like, God puts the perfect Umas and the perfect quest into the world to screw over the Union. Like, not only just the Union, humanity. Although defeating the quest will help them out, they have to do it or else they're incurring penalties. it always backfires no matter what. Like, for instance, the Four Kings arc, no matter what, if they lost, they were getting revolution added to the world. But what God and the Apocalypse book didn't tell them is that even if you defeat all of these seasons, you're quite literally doing the same thing as adding revolutions to the earth. They took the world out of balance, and they created this situation where even if we're not hurtling towards the sun, we're still hurtling towards the sun. And it just, I don't know, I think it's very cool plot progression points to have all these Umas within the story that whenever they are added to the earth, it changes everything throughout history. Whenever they're taken away from the earth, it also changes everything throughout history, and it adds these large-scale repercussions, such as, Fuko being able to be brought back to life, or Ragnarok being expedited just due to the fact that God's kind of setting up the Queen's Gambit. Like, I win no matter what. This is checkmate type shit. Either you guys are going into the sun, or I'm going to come down there and kill everybody. Like, it's crazy. And even just, like I was mentioning, like, just Yoshifumi adding Umas into the series to foreshadow, or at least let happen certain things later in the series, such as, Uma Ghost being added to the Earth. Andy would have never been able to get Fuko back. He would have never been able to use his Getchuga Tent Slice if he was never able to astral project and just use his soul to its liking. Like, there's a lot of things within the series that have just been nothing but interesting. But I don't know. I need to edit this. This might be long. You guys probably don't want to listen to me anymore. However, thank you for listening. Please drop a like, comment, subscribe even if you want. But however, I need to skip it out of here. Hasta luego, mi amigo.